Sustainability and agile, is that a thing? Why and if even matters? How are these two things connected, agile, sustainability, and if they are connected, in fact? And some steps to embody as practitioner. Now, probably a good place to start is context and the context of our home, the world, is in a climate and a public crisis, and we have an urgent need to reduce our carbon emissions. Now, think that as a whole, as a globe, in the Paris Agreement, which is legally binded as a globe, we are to halve our emissions. That's by 2030, right? To go to net zero, but especially at 2030, halve them. And we have multiple different things to achieve. Certain ones are to achieve earlier than others, especially because of the knock-on effect. Hence, this one, halving by 2030. And I argue that we need to go beyond that mission zero by regenerating the biosphere and the very systems that sustain our life on Earth. Now, companies are faced with the challenge of not only tracking the complete spectrum of the value chain emissions, which can be complex and cumbersome as well, but also once you have the expectation of the organizations are even higher and closer we get to that 2030, more regulatory requirements and then related fees and other things, but also to gather that data on the emission producing activities, to calculate, to report the contribution to those atmospheric emissions, to reduce those emissions across all the different scopes. And I'll think here another video that we did around understanding net zero and different things. Now, as agile practitioners, much of what we do is being change enablers, right? Enable change. We are hired to do business transformation, and I argue transform but evolve, right? Doing business evolution, not just revolution. So what a greater and most pressing challenge than sustaining life on Earth. Now, this may ring a bell. Promote sustainable development. We should be able to maintain constant pace indefinitely. It's from the Agile Manifesto. And let me read to you a snippet of Sustainable Happy Profit. Right? Being sustainable is not just about the product itself, which is built to endure over time. It's also about the people, time, and energy involved in the process, and the consumption its existence requires. If any single part of the process cannot be maintained over time, it's unsustainable. So that's a snippet of the book. And you know what? How we operate right now is not sustainable. Else, we wouldn't be in a climate emergency and social crisis as we are in. Now, as agile practitioners, systems change is much of what we do. It would be so easy if an organizational change happens in a linear fashion, but that's not the case. And similarly, climate related is such a broad, complex, and ever moving topic. It's a hypersystems change. And here is where I see a lot of commonalities and potential for our agile community, the skills that we have at hand, and be the change we want to see. It all starts with deciding to change. It's like if we start accounting our carbon equivalents, but continue with the exact business as usual. It's a very similar effect in a much more down detail when we start doing daily stand-ups, most often sitting down, with no context of why and how, nor intention of change how we do business as usual. So let's correlate the work that we do and start by embedding the purpose and intrinsic decision to evolve. And as eager as you may be, unless there is momentum and willingness to change in the organization, the needle won't move that much. So we need to start that passion and energy that you may hold to generate ripple effects and not to burn out. And we need every bit of energy. So let's not go through burnout. So here is what I think we can start doing to get started. Plant a seed, feed the ground, nurture the environment, and then adjust from fruits. Let's have a look at each one of those sections. Plant a seed. If you are in an organization that is not yet ready for this, forcing it is not going to help. It will just generate more resistance. Organizations at this stage, even when forced by regulations, are investing time and effort in finding ways around it instead of ways forward. So, as Agile practitioner here, what you can do is to diagnose why. Why are they not engaging without judgment? Just apply deep curiosity and compassion. To meet people where they are, we must first learn where they are and then plant a seed. How can we help connect that place and the issue at hand? Here, a little and within context goes a long way. Then, if the seed is planted, it's time to feed the ground. So, when you find yourself in the transition point of an organization, understanding that they do have a role to play, that there are consequences and costs of the current behaviors, don't rush. There will be hesitation. There are forces pulling each way to change or not to change. And climate change and its implications is a huge topic and it can feel overwhelming and emotionally difficult. So just don't jump the gun, just take action, taking the time here to understand why the change matter, what are the benefits doing so, what are the ripple effects, and help the organization to savor and contemplate. Help connect the conversations to larger goals. How does this connect to our longer term vision? And has the vision even evolved? Just jumping into these joint actions is going to burn a lot of energy very quickly, which is instead much needed to drive through the challenges ahead. So avoid doing zombie, right? Which have seen in our craft is zombie is the act of going through the motions without emotions. So really ground into what matters. Next up is environment nurture. And what I mean with that is how can you prepare the environment for success of what you're setting ourselves to do? How can it be embedded to the core of the organizational fabric? For a commitment to change to be intrinsic, not just the external pressures and expectations. And this leads to genuine care and motivation to leave the place better than how we found it. That's sort of my motto of generation, leaving the place better than how we found it. And that's holistic. And when I say the place, I mean your products and services, the people, and yes, the planet. So get your Agile toolbox ready here to be infused with us as a stakeholder. What would that look like? Which tools do you use today to enable system change? What are the levers? What are the things that we have already under our belt to evolve products to account for social capital? Now, let me just put here one tool that I propose out of many. And use stuff like this often. Then, last but not least, once we start applying and evolving our own practice, start pulling some levers, right? The action has happened. It's time to adjust from the fruits. So reflect on how to become more effective so that the organization constantly tunes and adjusts accordingly. And at the core of what we do, how can you infuse those feedback loops? How can you reduce feedback delay? This is particularly important regarding emissions because we can't afford to wait. Let me read you another snippet here from Sustainable Happy Profit. CO2 emissions stays in the atmosphere for decades, if not centuries. So even if we had the ability to turn off an imaginary switch right now, we will still see in the days, months, and years to come increased repercussions from emissions that we have already released into the atmosphere. We are unable to see it yet because of feedback delay. Now, if this resonates, calls homes, get you excited, gets you unsettled, then tell me what's going on through your mind. What is the legacy we wish to live as a community? What is the potential we have at hand? How would you like to contribute? If a future seed of yours could speak, what would it like to say?